Today I am showing you how to make these potato rolls. They are delicious. These start with mashed potatoes. So what I have here is a large potato. We're going to peel it and cut it and boil it just as if we were making mashed potatoes. So we're going to cut it into large chunks here, as you see me doing. We don't need small pieces. Just big chunks is good. Throw them into a pot. Then we're going to cover the potatoes with water, just until they're covered. We don't need a whole lot of water here. Take them to the stove, bring them to boil, and simmer them covered for 25 minutes. Now we are going to drain the potatoes, but we want to save the potato water because we're going to use it in our recipe. So just drain the potatoes and keep that water. We won't need all of it, but we do want a significant amount of it. So drain it into a bowl so that you can use it. I'll put my potatoes into my bowl and I'll mash them with a whisk. And we just want to mash them. We don't need to make them completely smooth. And I saved about a cup and a half of the potato water. The rest you can compost, use in your garden, throw it down the drain. So here we have the potatoes mashed and the potato water, but they're very hot. So we'll need to cool them down for a bit before we can use them in our recipe. So now we'll start adding the rest of our ingredients that the potatoes have cooled down to a more manageable temperature, which is under 115 degrees. And we're going to add some sugar because these are a fairly sweeter tasting roll. We'll add our yeast. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to cool down the potatoes is we didn't want to kill our yeast. Yeast does not like a very hot temperature, so we want it to be under 115 degrees Fahrenheit to just make sure the yeast can thrive. Next, we will pour in our potato water. And the reason I love recipes like this is that everything just goes right into the big bowl. Next, we'll add eggs. The other reason why we didn't want it very hot, because the eggs will kind of start scrambling if the temperature is too warm. So the eggs go in, and then we'll measure out our flour. And whenever I can, I like to weigh out the flour instead of using cups. I always find that no matter how careful I am, every cup will weigh a different amount. Next, the salt goes in. A little bit of salt always helps. And lastly, we are going to add some butter. And this will help kind of, along with the egg, give the dough a slightly golden color once it's baked. Once we have all that goodness in our bowl, we'll take it over to the mixer and we are going to mix it on the second setting for 10 minutes and it will make a nice smooth dough. Using the dough hook, of course. Now our dough is done mixing. It's been 10 minutes. And we're just going to take it out and put it into a covered container where it can rise. It will rise for about an hour and a half. If you have a warm kitchen. In a colder kitchen, it will probably take up to 2 hours. In the winter, this recipe takes me much longer than in the summer. So the dough has doubled in size, as you see here. Now this is I've doubled this recipe because I have a large family. You can, by all means, make a half batch. I like to make sure that all my rolls are the same size, so I like to measure out my dough so I can calculate what size to make each roll depending on how many I want to make. So the pan I'm using holds about, oh, it can hold up to 48 rolls, but I don't want them to be quite that small. So I'm making 35 rolls and measuring out they're about 68 to 70 grams that I'm going to be making. And we want to cover them up so they don't dry out while we get to rolling them all out, because they're much easier to roll if they're still moist and soft. So we're going to roll these out. I like to form the roll a little bit and then take it to my counter and roll it out. And it's just about finding the right amount of pressure and using your cupped hand to keep the roll in one area. This is a fairly sticky dough, so it will stick to your counter. So just make sure you use a little bit of flour. It helps to kind of fold the dough over a few times to kind of give it a smooth surface before you start rolling. And then you get these perfectly formed rolls. Beautiful. And we're going to roll until we're out of rolls. I like to space them about this much apart. You can make them even closer together and they'll really be kind of tight, but this is a good distance. These will expand quite a bit as they're rising and baking. So we're going to cover them up and we're going to let them rise for an hour and a half to 2 hours until they're very puffy and soft and just ready to go in the oven. In the meantime, also preheat your oven so it's ready to go for when they're ready to go. So this is about an hour and a half later, and they are just big and soft and just fully risen. Make sure that you always grease your plastic before you cover your rolls so it doesn't stick to them. Now they're in the oven they go for 20 to 25 minutes. We're going to melt some butter, about 2 tablespoons or 28 grams, and we're going to use that on the baked rolls to give them a nice shiny finish. This is how they look like when they just come out of the oven, and now we're going to paint this beautiful melted butter over them. You can see the nice golden color they have. They're fully baked, and oh, look at that shine. The butter just really adds something special to it. I'm going to pull one apart here so you can see how soft this dough is. And these rolls are just amazing. They are our favorite dinner roll at our house. I mean, they just disappear because people eat them so quickly. Enjoy. Nothing like some butter.